Pete, let's take a look at your Cowboys because
good Lord.
the state of the Dallas. Pete, I saw Jerry Jones, who's, Pete and I would say a friend of ours. Saw him walking through the halls down there in the stadium. Not a word. Not a word. His whole group that they're walking down there to the locker room. I mean, this was an old-fashioned ass whooping.
Right.
But take a look at this, folks, and let us know what you think via NFL on Fox.
Looks like some confusion. Look at those fans all fighting. He is not performing as a guy who just got paid to perform, by the way, either, John. I mean, that's been part of the problem.
No. And now with the burden of Lamb and him, Pete, on that payroll, how are they going to get anybody else?
Right.
How do they sign, Micah Parsons and all these guys? How do they sign all these guys?
Right. And the other problem, too, John, that defense is beat up right now. And so that just adds insult to injury, of course. But, I mean, when you look at that defense right now, Micah Parsons, he was hurt. One of the big defensive ends, he's hurt. When you look at in the secondary as well as the linebackers, they're hurt. So they've got too many people injured at the same time. They've got so much money into two players, as you just were pointing out. I don't know. I think Jerry maybe didn't quite see it the way that a lot of us are seeing it, as far as what do they really need to do? Who do they really need to pay? And did they need to give the amount of money that they have to some of the folks that they've got? I don't know, John. It's a difficult thing. Obviously, it's not easy. But I will say the Cowboys do not look like America's team right now. There's no doubt about that. Detroit actually looks like America's team.
Yeah. Look at how similar those colors are, too.
Yeah, those uniforms looked great yesterday. They were wearing the all white. The only thing they had that wasn't was the helmets in the silver and blue, and that looked great too. So it was fun watching it. I'm not even going to hit the NFL today, John. I wanted to hit a couple other things. How about this?
Okay.
So we always used to use the expression, welcome to the whatever, right? Like when you came to a big university, they're like, welcome to Alabama, boy, and they hit you, right? And they hit you pretty damn hard because you're coming out of high school and it kind of wakes you up to where you are. Well, how about this? Welcome to the Big Ten, USC. Welcome to the Big Ten, UCLA. John, their combined record right now is 1-6 in the Big Ten. The two Southern California schools that went to the Big Ten, they are 1-6 against Big Ten competition. And you could go to 1-7 if you included Oregon, but you really can't do that because Oregon came in the package as well that brought Oregon and Washington to the Big Ten. So Oregon whooped UCLA, by the way. But Washington right now, they're 2-2, so they're 500. Oregon is 3-0. Oregon's top two team in the country right now in terms of record, what they're looking at right now. They're undefeated. They look unbelievable. And then you've got somebody like UCLA who right now, John, they are at the absolute bottom of the Big Ten. And it's pretty interesting to see how the mighty have fallen, so to speak. And we've talked about that at other times as well. But the top five right now, you've got 3 Big Ten teams and 2 SEC teams, John. That's what you're looking at for the top 5. Now, we've expanded this thing, so it's going to be really interesting. There are going to be I'll challenge you with this one. John, will anybody be undefeated, including Texas? Will anybody be undefeated when the season is over before you start going into the playoff hunt?
I got to say no, Pete. I don't think so. But what works against Texas in that regard is the later you lose, the more likely it is you don't even make the playoffs.
Yeah.
Now, there are exceptions. You could lose a very, very close game to the number 2 in the nation and still make it in or something like that. But if you have a misstep, and teams do have missteps quite frequently, where you've got a flat, you come out flat because you're looking ahead to the next week or looking ahead to the playoffs or whatever, and you miss because the other team's fired up. I mean, look at Vandy.
Yeah.
What did Saban say, Pete? Saban says, well, that's one place you never worry about playing at.
They needed to worry.
Maybe they should have.
You can't blame Saban for that comment at all, but it just shows you, that any given Sunday, I mean, and in this case, Saturday, Sunday, Friday, Thursday, whatever day, because we know right now we're in that period of time, John, where every single day there is a game on TV. It's either a college or an NFL game, but every single day from here all the way, I think, to the end of November or something like that. It's some amazing stat that guys love to put out there. How about baseball, John? We've got Major League Baseball. We got the National League. We got the American League. The National League already had their first game. The Dodgers beat the living tar out of the Mets. They beat them 9-0. And you know why? Because the guy that you and I have been on for multiple years now doing what we do here, we've talked about Shohei Ohtani a ton. And we've talked about if he comes to a stadium near you, you owe it to yourself to see modern day the best player in all of baseball. Now, you can say, well, Pete, what about this guy back in 1950? I'm not talking about that. But when you see Ohtani play, this guy is great in everything that he touches. He's 6'4", 230-pound guy. He hits the ball 550 feet. Here's his stats, John. He's a 300 hitter, 310. He's got 130 RBIs. He's got 54 home runs, and 59 stolen bases. I mean, he has put this up here where I don't know if I can see anybody, obviously, the future, you never know, anything like what he's been able to do in a short period of time. This is his best year, and he didn't even pitch this year. And the guy has done it all, and it's amazing. And then now we're going to have their game tonight, but we're also going to have the Yankee game. And I guess the question I have is, which would be more fun to you? To have a Subway Series, Mets-Yankees, or the Yankees-Dodgers going across the country back and forth for this, what would you think is the more fun? I don't even know. I don't know. I think it's cool when you can get the Subway thing going, but there's something about LA and New York going at each other. They hate each other to some degree, anyway. So what do you think? What do you prefer?
Well, Stevie Cohen, our friend, Pete, isn't going to like it, but I'd like to see that coast to coast. I'd like to see LA versus New York. On the other hand, whatever Diaz and the trumpet playing as he comes out onto the field, for the save, I love that, the theater of that. That's fantastic. Three of the teams in here, folks, are the three highest payrolls in baseball. The Yankees, the Mets, and the Dodgers. The Guardians, I think it is. I think I called them Gladiators once before.
Well, they changed these names, John, because of political correctness and whatever.
The Cleveland Guardians have a payroll of 108 mil. The other three are close to 300 mil. So it's kind of like, So the Yankees versus the Guardians, obviously the Guardians have a shot, but nobody in TV-dom wants to see them beat the Yankees. That, if there was a fix, and I think occasionally there are fixes that go in, Pete, I would say the fix should be for the Yankees. Now, of those other two, I think both are going to draw tremendously, Dodgers and Mets. So it won't matter who is the winner of that series in terms of TV audience, but a big deal difference on the Cleveland Guardians versus the New York Yankees and Aaron Judge.
Last thing, John, this is just the one I'm going to add real quick just for fun anyway. The Minnesota Twins, I'm in Minnesota. The Minnesota Twins they basically, the owner said, you know what, we're out. We've had a great run. 1984, we bought the team for $44 million. That's $44 million. They now want to sell it, and it's going to go probably north of $1.5 billion. Now, that's nothing compared to the NFL. It's nothing compared to the NBA and all the rest of it. But who do you think would make the most sense as a buyer? Is there anybody that comes to mind for you, John? And I say that by saying, I think it should be somebody who lives locally. Baseball is different than football. The Wilfs own the Vikings, and they're here every game. They're at every game that there is. But they're not here. They're from New Jersey, right? But it works okay. There's only the 17 games plus playoffs. But with baseball, you kind of need to have an owner, I think, who knows a little something about the cities and all the rest of it and, all of that. So I'm just curious. I've got one in mind, but what about you? Do you got anybody?
I've got the same one, I bet. the owner of Cambria.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Marty Davis. Yeah.
I think Mr. Davis would be a great owner for the Twins. I think it would be a great investment for him, because even though baseball doesn't share TV revenue, folks,
Right. It's a problem.
and that's a mistake. That will change over time, eventually. And when it does, that team's worth $3 billion, Pete. Three, not $1.5 billion. But who knows how long that takes? Is it a decade off or whatever? But this guy, folks, is the family, self-made. They took whey, which is a byproduct in milk, and they used to throw it away, literally away. Pun is intended. And now they made billions selling whey as a protein. Basically powderized it, sold it as protein. Boom. Then they have Cambria. Then they bought Sun Country. I mean, what doesn't that family own now, Pete? They can easily take them down.
They got a really good number for the whey company, John. I want to say it was something in the $6 billion range when they sold that. I don't know what they sold Sun Country for, but they sold that just a couple of years ago, and they still have Cambria, right? So, yeah. And Cambria is big, really, really, really big. It's them or that family, at least, or maybe the Cargills. People don't know Minnesota well enough. There are some very, very wealthy Minnesotans out there. And you know what? I think it should be somebody who is in the Twin Cities that should be the owners. And the Pohlads did a great job at times, but they didn't want to use the money, John. They did not want to spend the money. This year, they had a heck of a good run going into September. In September, they lost, I think, something like 80% of their games in the month of September. They didn't do anything at the trade deadline and all the rest of it. The whole thing imploded. I mean, we were looking at the playoffs and sniffing towards the playoffs, not far from the Guardians or the whoever you said they were.
Gladiators.
But they just collapsed. They absolutely collapsed. And then it came out just the other day that they're going up for sale. So it'll be interesting to see who actually, gets a hold of them. It could be the two guys that are trying to buy the Timberwolves, and they haven't been able to execute that. And at least you've got a guy from baseball as part of that whole deal too. So A-Rod. So, who knows? It could be interesting.
Yeah. Well, folks, thank you for joining us today. We will be back tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Remember, you can always check out our subscriptions where you could be trading the same kind of stocks Pete and I are trading and all of our subscribers. If you go to marketrebellion.com/get started, you can see about coaching, mentoring, education, financial literacy, and those subscriptions all on that site, marketrebellion.com/get started. All right, Pete, I'll see you tomorrow. See everybody at 1 p.m. Eastern Time tomorrow.